There is a quote from Thomas Paine that is appropriate to read before I introduce my guest. Quote, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman." Unquote. Pastor Artur Pawlowski has become a living symbol of defiance against tyranny in Canada and his province of Alberta. He came to worldwide attention for his unceremonious expulsion of Calgary police officers and health officials from his church during Passover services, calling them Nazi psychopaths, Gestapo, and unbelievable, sick, evil people. His arrests in the middle of a rainy Calgary highway and on the tarmac of Calgary Airport also caught the eye of freedom-loving people as they watch Canada devolve into a police state. He has been singled out by petty and egomaniacal politicians and bureaucrats, harassed and persecuted for standing up for his own health decisions and his individual rights, fined for not wearing a mask, jailed, effectively imprisoned in his own home, forced to pay enormous fines, denied bail on one charge, and kept in solitary confinement. A modern-day Job whose soul is definitely being tried. His experiences are proof that our rights and freedoms in this country are not protected by law, and that, to the lower courts at least, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is subservient to the diktats of medical civil servants, and that there is little justice, either in Alberta or Canada. He's now taking his fight to the electorate, and this past September was elected to lead the Independence Party of Alberta. Pastor Pawlowski, welcome to our program, and could you please tell us your story?
Thank you so much. Well, where do I begin? Well, as you can tell, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. And I think that's very important for people to know because I've seen this movie before, this movie called Tyranny firsthand. And of course, being a Polish immigrant, I grew up in a very peculiar country that was attacked without mercy throughout its history. Myself, I grew up in a city called Knurów, where we had concentration camp, of course, during the Nazi regime. I remember playing in bunkers of the SS, you know, the leftovers of that horror. But growing up under the boots of the socialism and communism, I saw what totalitarian regime looks like, smells like, feels like. And eventually, my parents had enough and they decided to emigrate to Greece. They took me and my brother David, and then eventually from Greece, after years of being there, we went to Canada. Why Canada? I mean, out of all the nations that we could pick, why Canada? Well, it was because of the meeting in embassy in Athens, where the officer told us we had a very successful business, and he told us to sell everything we have and come to Canada. Canada is the freest country on earth, and in Canada, no one will ever persecute you for your faith. So we did not emigrated to this land for money. We had our El Dorado, if you will, in Greece. We came here for freedom. We were sick and tired of corruption. We were sick and tired of the abuse of power. And we decided to come to a nation that the rule of law means something. That's what we taught. I mean, growing up under total craziness and abuse of power in Poland and then corruption in Europe, we decided to come to a country that we will not have to be subjected to such a craziness. Well, what we didn't know, of course, was that Canada was changing. Slowly but surely, I went back to business, very successful. And then in 1999, that's my 24th year, I started to take care of the homeless people. When God changed my entire life, when he touched me, I decided to share it, my wealth with others. And I started to work with the homeless people, taking them off the streets. And eventually, it's a long, complicated story, but eventually in 2005, I walked away from business and I dedicated my money and my time to save as many as many people as possible, I started a ministry called Street Church, and I started over 40 missions like this all around the world. It's it's a church for the poor. It's a soup kitchen where people can come and eat, but also listen to words of hope and music and testimonies. It's actually an amazing time together. For the 3 hours, we change the neighborhood literally, and we make it peaceful and loving, compassionate, and people can take food for the next day. So we're doing this for a very long time. Of course, the government, when we were little, didn't care. When we became stronger and we took 600 people off the streets within the first 3 months, the government, politicians, shelters, mainstream media got noticed, and they started to bombard me with tickets. I mean, I was shocked. That was my first shocker that Canada is no longer a democracy, but some kind of a police state where the elected so-called servants of the people decide what is acceptable and what's not anymore. Of course, contrary to the Constitution, Criminal Code of Canada, and Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So anyway, from 2005 to 2015, I was harassed, attacked, intimidated, ticketed, arrested, taken before the courts without mercy. The charges were absolutely shocking. And I know that to this day, many Canadians do not even know that they have in their books bylaws that are contrary to our highest law. For example, I was charged with giving free goods and services. Apparently in Canada, you're not allowed to give a sandwich to a dying child in a public place, because if you do, well, if they don't like you, they can ticket you, they can arrest you, they can put you in prison. They've done that to me. I was also told the prayer in public is also illegal, giving free goods and services. So as a clergyman, if I pray for you in public, well, without a permit and for free, that's also a crime. I was also told that the distribution of printed material is also illegal in Canada. So Bibles, gospel tracts, we received tickets after tickets. My record during that time was 300 citations, over 100 court cases, and 11 arrests for me just being a pastor in Canada. So that was my introduction to socialism and communism, or if you will, the wannabe pharaohs of today, because that's exactly what we're observing. The elites, the small group of people that can do whatever they want. One law for D, a totally different law for me. It's happening right now, and the rest of us are just slaves. I won, believe it or not, after appeals and fights, and millions of dollars later, I've lost. I used to be a very wealthy man. I had 7 houses. All of them went to pay the bills, just to survive this enormous amount of attacks that I received. Sometimes they had 7 lawyers against me. The province of Alberta wasted tens of millions of dollars to fight a clergyman that just kept feeding the poor and saving taxpayers millions of dollars. But they didn't like that I did it in the name of Jesus. You see, they offered me millions of dollars if I would give up my religion. If I would just do it as a good Albertan, that would be part of the system. They would give me money. Just don't tell the people about hope. Don't tell them about Jesus. Of course, I couldn't obey that, and they came hammering down. 2015, I won. They leave me be for a few years, and then, of course, the craziness, the invisible enemy shows up the beginning of 2020. As you remember, I became the first Canadian citizen to be charged with a COVID Nazi ticket. Before that, I received a letter from the City Hall telling me that I have to stop feeding the poor because we are in the middle of this crazy pandemic. And I thought to myself, like, you people do not make any sense. If we're truly in the middle of this crisis, my services are needed more than ever. And I replied to them. I said, just what do you think is going to happen to 15 to 20,000 different individuals that are facing homelessness in our cities in the province of Alberta? You're shutting down shelters, you're shutting down soup kitchens. Those people are going to turn to crime. They're going to whack your father's head. They're going to break into garages, cars, stores, houses. I mean, obviously, people need to eat. They need shelter. They're going to do something to survive. No one cared. Believe it or not. The mayor didn't reply. The ministers didn't reply. I sent a letter to the premier. He didn't care. And instead, I had 12 officers showing up at our church. And I was the first Canadian to get a COVID ticket and the threat of arrest and $1 million ticket. And that was 2020. Every week I would feed the poor. I would end up either with a ticket or harassment or intimidation. And then, of course, the end of the 2020 happened. And I'm sure you remember when the government just announced that Halloween is perfectly okay. Kids go and have fun. But then when Christmas came, it was a total lockdown. No one was allowed to celebrate Christmas. No one could come together. No dinners, no coffee with your brother, nothing. Zero. No singing allowed. No churches allowed. No family dinners allowed. So what I did, I invited my whole family and my friends, and we did the biggest Christmas dinner we could, and I sent them a picture. The chief of police replied that they're going to send the cruisers, and they're going to look if people have extra cars in their driveway. So I decided to go on television too, and I invited, first of all, I said, I'm canceling you devils, and I invited people to the biggest Christmas celebration in the country. Thousands of people showed up, and we had AAA steaks, we had gifts for the homeless people, and we had over 100 police officers, 52 police cars, 20 cops on bicycles, SWAT team, anti-terrorists showed up, chief of police, and they came bearing gifts. I ended up with 15 more COVID tickets. And we did the unthinkable. We had carolers. And we were told that singing is going to wipe out the entire neighborhoods. I mean, it was a total insanity that even during the communism, I have not seen it. And when I learned about Nazis, even they would not dare to go as far that singing is prohibited by law. It was a total craziness. Of course, I end up on all over the news. And then they decided to come to our church. I pastor 2 churches. One is called Street Church, streetchurch.ca. It's 3 times a week feeding the homeless people. And then another one is in a building, like a regular church building where I teach in theology and history. And so they came and they blocked a driveway to the church. I mean, it was craziness. And then they came with telescopic cameras and taking pictures of our women and children. If you know anything about communists, that was exactly the tactics of the KGB. When they couldn't do anything to the men, they would pressure the men by, hey, we know where your wife works. We got a picture. Look at your daughter. You know what we can do to your 12-year-old daughter, etc. So those were the tactics that Calgary police started to implement. And then the Passover came. Passover of 2021, when those Gestapos, because that's what they are. And by the way, for the people that do not understand the word, Gestapo simply means political police. Those people are not acting in a capacity of peace officers. They are just simply political enforcers, a muscle for the biggest mafia that we have right now, which is corrupted to the core, compromised politicians. So anyway, if you watch the video, the Get Out video, the only thing I had to tell them is get out. And it took me over 30 times to tell them to get out. And finally they leave, and they came back with a court order from, I call them now the 3 crooked amigos. The first, David Gates of Alberta, gave the authorities power to arrest me with any force deemed necessary, to enter our church with whomever they want to enter with and anytime they want to. So SWAT team showed up, kicked them out. They showed up again, kicked them out. They showed up again. And then they went to the boss of judges, John Rook, the crook, as I call him, the second crooked amigo. And he gave them the power, as you remember, in the province of Alberta. to arrest everyone and anyone, children, men, young, or it doesn't matter, women, men, anyone that dares to oppose health inspector could be arrested. So the SWAT team showed up again with that corrupted judge's order, and they opened the door, but it was totally packed. So they decided, okay, we got to wait for the people to go home like cowards that they are. And that's exactly what they did. People went home. We started driving back to our homes, and then we got arrested in the middle of the highway, me and my brother David. We spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete, saw another crooked judge, Adam Germain. And when he started the proceedings, I said to my brother David, it's done. He's not the judge. He's a political activist. He started with, we're in the middle of pandemic. And my good friend, John Rook, asked me to look over those cases. And I said, like, his boss calls him to look, and we are here because of his boss's orders. Like, there is no way. It's a show trial. That's what it is. A show trial is a decided trial by the tyrants, and they're just doing this for gimmicks. That's what it means. It's just for the show. And that's exactly what happened. This judge found us guilty, gave me the famous compel speech. I don't know if you remember that, telling me that every single time we open our mouths to another human being, we must parrot the government rhetorics on this lie. And of course, me and my brother David, we refused. We said, Judge, I hope we're listening, that we will never obey this order. Anyway, fast forward, we appealed the decision, and 3 judges anonymously decided that the arrests and everything was done to us was completely illegal. And then the truck convoy comes. And by now I was called Canada's pastor. I was referred to Freedom Pastor. We had 15 to 20,000 people every week on the streets of Calgary marching. And then the trackers came and they asked me if I would officiate, church services for them. And of course, I was glad to do it. And we fed the trackers off. They went to Ottawa, and we kept the fort here with their local rallies. And then Milk River started to happen, and the Coots. Coots is the border between Montana and Alberta. So here is what I saw during the truck convoy. I saw something absolutely unbelievable, beautiful. The people came from every color, every creed. A language didn't matter. Where they emigrated from did not matter. Young and old, children, families were bringing their dogs, their horses, their cats. I saw people crying with each other, praying for each other, loving, hugging, congregating, singing. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen on this soil here in our beloved Canada, or China, I should call it now. So, I did a church service in Milk River. I took my brother, my son Nathaniel, and a friend, a worship leader from our church. We sang songs, national anthem. We ate with the people. We had a Lord's Supper. I delivered a sermon, and then we asked the RCMP to open the barricade because the roads were open when we came and the roads were open when we left. The only blockade was the RCMP. So I asked them if they would open for us so I can go to Coots, and they did. And they did open the barricade. We went there, and I did a second church service, again, singing hymns, national anthem, prayer. We had a Lord's Supper together. We had a dinner together, and I delivered a 19-minute speech to the people. Here is what I said to Canadians. And if I could, I would say the same thing again, over and over again. I am not ashamed of what I said. I stand by every word I said. I told Canadians to stand up and rise up for the God and state given rights. I reminded them about solidarity movement, the power of non-compliance during the Lech Wałęsa, when millions of Poles took it to the streets and the entire Soviet tyranny collapsed and the Iron Curtain was broken, the Berlin Wall fall down. I just reminded them about history. There's more of us than of the villains if people will unite, because what they have been doing for the past few years was division, segregation, separation. But if we will understand what's happening and come together, it's over for the villains. So that's what I said to the people. I told them that with God we win. I had my solidarity hoodie, and I told them 3 times, peacefully, no guns, no swords. This is a non-compliant civil rights style movement of simply paralyzing their system by not participating in this craziness, not working for the wannabe pharaohs. Very peaceful. No one stopped me. RCMP was there, but no one said anything. They let me back home. A few days later, believe it or not, I stepped out of my house, and it was a gong show. It was a greatest takedown of El Chapo of Calgary or Al Capone of Canada. I don't know what those people were thinking. I was arrested by RCMP, detectives, undercover police, uniformed Calgary police, SWAT team. They blocked the street. It was insanity. I was interrogated for hours, stripped naked, taken to prison, and placed in solitary confinement. The next day, they took me from my solitary confinement to metal cages, literally metal cages that you couldn't stand. You had to just sit like this. I had no idea what's going on. I thought they're going to murder me there. And they kept me in solitary for 45 days. Of course, denying my Bible, not giving me my reading glasses. Everything they did was illegal. They would not allow me to see my lawyers for 3 weeks. It was insanity, straight from the Soviet Russia playbook. Eventually, 45 days later, I was kidnapped, literally kidnapped by sheriffs, taken hundreds of miles away without the knowledge of my family or my lawyers, placed in a MACSPOT. MACSPOT is a prison for the most dangerous terrorists, but bloody murderers. If you are so dangerous, they will put you in a MACSPOT. So I was the only inmate in the entire prison unit during that time. Freezing conditions, sitting like this and shivering. So you are allowed to go 30 minutes out of your solitary cell. So I made a phone call and I said to my wife, because by now 5 different inmates already testified that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me, to beat me up in prison. So I said to my wife, I think they're going to murder me here. I don't think I'm going to survive. It's a minus 28. I'm sitting here shivering, and I complained, and they were laughing at me. So tell the lawyer that she needs to do something to fight for my life, or I'm dead. I'll not make it. So she sent a letter to the judge. And when the judge learned about this, that scared the remand center, because it's a private institution. It's run like cattle business, more cattle, more money they receive from the taxpayers. So the next day, I was taken from my solitary MACSPOT unit for terrorists, and you won't believe that, they placed me in a psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors, without even the knowledge of the Alberta Health Services. Totally illegal, Soviet style, North Korea, China style of dealing with this political dissidents. So I was placed over there, spent a week. It was absolutely crazy. Wherever I showed up, I was recognized by the inmates. So whatever they wanted to do, it backfired on them, because I was the most popular inmate. People were chanting, "Free Pastor Art. If anything happens to him, we'll go after you." And that's why I believe they did not dare to beat me up or to hurt me physically, because of the popularity that I had in all those different units. So that was going on for 50 days. And then eventually I was released from prison. Multiple times they denied my bail because I was considered the most dangerous in Alberta. The Crown prosecutor accused me that I cost Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages for my sermon to Quds. This pathological liar's name is Stephen Johnston. Stephen Johnston, that lying devil, crown prosecutor in a province of Alberta, lied to the judges, made stuff up, totally untrue, and they denied my bail, only to hurt me, only to keep me in prison. Eventually, I was released, facing trial, and placed on house arrest, which to this day, I am still on house arrest a year later, because I'm considered extremely dangerous, to a point that I could not even have a pen in prison because I was considered too dangerous. It was totally crazy. So a trial happened a few weeks ago, and here is a bizarre thing about this whole ordeal, that the Crown prosecutor did not call even one witness. In other words, what he said is that we don't need any witnesses. The sermon that he said is criminal in nature. I am the first and the only Canadian clergyman ever charged with terrorism, so interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act, mischief over 5,000, and then breach of probation. And my sermon is the first and the only sermon on trial. It's so crazy. The Crown prosecutor went line by line, telling the judge an interpretation of what I meant by what I said. He compared my sermon to a Rwanda genocide. He said that my sermon was inciting people to commit acts of murder. It was a gong show. 2 days of listening to lawyers going back and forth what I meant by what I said during my 19-minute sermon. It was an insanity. Like I said to the people and to the media, this is truly a trial of the century, because if I go down, if I am found guilty, then every politician that makes a political statement, every commentator, every media personality, every person that dares to say anything contrary to the government can be charged with terrorism for simply saying what he feels. And of course, we have a fundamentally guaranteed rights that this government, and I'm talking about federal, provincial, and municipal governments, completely ignore. Those politicians are no longer serving people. They are little tyrants that are greedy for more. They've tasted the blood, they've tasted the power, and they will come for more. So anyway, I did my best to kind of summarize the craziness. I can talk for hours about what happened, but for the sake of time, this is what happened. 340 citations, over 100 court cases, and 16 arrests so far is under my belt, simply for being a pastor in supposedly free and democratic society.
Wow, what a story. I'm flabbergasted. That's incredible. I hope you're going to write a book about it.
Well, I'm writing it when I have time. At least the COVID ordeal and prison, so it will come. It will come soon.
Yes, and I hope it gets put into a television miniseries, because everybody should know this. Most of this was unknown to me, or the parts that were known to me are like sanitized. When you see yourself talking on the street to a reporter, it's a sound bite here and there, and you go, okay, so somebody got a ticket, a fine. You never see the struggle that you're going through, and you've articulated it amazingly. It's quite a story. I just, when you were saying it, I was trying to think of when it all started. And if I could give an opinion here, it sounded as if you were honing in on the territory of the government. Bear with me. The government, a socialist government like we all live in, has to have victims. It has to have homeless. It has to have people that it can help. And you're showing them up because you're doing it. 600 people off the street in 3 months. You're showing them how to do it privately. They're not needed. And I think that's probably what got their attention, is that you were showing them up and honing in on their territory. What do you think?
100%. There is actually few factors that play here. The shelters are being run just like the Riemann centers per cattle. More heads, more money.
Yeah.
If we are too successful in rehabilitating criminals, then the Riemann centers are going to lose millions of dollars. If we take homeless people off the streets, then the shelters will stop receiving the funding. I mean, it's very clear that we're talking about $230 million that are being designated to fight homelessness in the province of Alberta every single year. So when you start asking a simple question, where is the money? Well, they are terrified of that question, and they will try to do everything in their power to destroy the person that is asking this uncomfortable question. So that's the first thing, money. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, prison business, and that's what it is business. And then homelessness, it's a big fat business, multi-billion-dollar business. When we started to be very successful, that threatened their business, and the politicians got involved because there's just too much money that they would lose if we clean the streets. Second thing is, you're right, socialists, communists, fascists, they want to be gods. They are the modern day pharaohs. And if you don't worship them, well, it's a competition. If you tell people there is actually God, a living God, and everyone will be accountable, well, that scares them. They don't like that because they don't want to be accountable. They are above the law. They can do whatever they want. They can lie, cheat, like we saw in the province of Alberta. Jason Kenney, the premier, with his cabinet ministers partying at the Sky Palace hypocrisy. Just 2 days after we were arrested in the middle of the streets, they said our church service was illegal, but their partying was perfectly okay, breaking the rules and regulations and mandates. So one law for me, one law for thee, that's the law of the pharaohs, the masters. We are the elites. You will own nothing. You will be eating crickets, riding a bicycle in minus 35. But we are the masters. We will keep our private jets, our SUVs, eating, best Alberta steaks, because that's us. The law doesn't apply to us. It applies only to the slaves. That's what is at play. And a pharaoh doesn't like when, you remind him that there is actually a living God that will judge them. They don't like to be judged. So those are the two things. Money, which of course is corruption. Those institutions are corrupted to the core with government. And then you've got a competition. They don't want to be found accountable. They don't want the reminder that they're not gods. And it's very fascinating, but for the past few years, every time they went on television and they said something, it was supposed to automatically become the law. Did you notice that? When they made recommendations, they were not recommendations, they were immediately laws. And of course, they were not passed. They were not approved by the people because the pharaoh has spoken. The God has spoken, so it becomes automatically a law. And then comes a man like me and says, no, we still have rules and regulations under the Criminal Code of Canada and Charter of Rights and Freedoms and our Constitution. Back off, you devils, you Nazis, you Gestapo, you pretendees. You're no longer police officers. You're not peace officers. You're a muscle for mafia. You act like mafia. You don't even follow your own laws, and you're telling me I'm the lawbreaker? No, you devils, you're the lawbreakers. So they don't like those types of people like me that remind them that sooner or later, maybe not here, but when they will die and every man dies, they're going to face the living God, a judge that doesn't take any bribes.
That is well said. From the perspective of competition, again, not only are you taking away their livelihood because you're taking homeless people off of the street and helping them privately, but you're giving people hope. Where once they were the God, now you're showing them an alternative. And it's been described that in the Soviet Union, that it was officially atheistic, but I've heard it said that no, what it was that the state supplanted religion. The Orthodox Church was gone. You must now worship the state. And Stalin was worshipped. Kim Jong-un is worshipped. These dictators are worshipped as gods. People look at the people fawning over Justin Trudeau. And you know that your religion has been supplanted by a state religion, atheistic as it may be, but it's certainly their gods are corporeal and sitting in Edmonton and in Ottawa. So that's an amazing story. I wonder if we could talk about, because I know your time is limited, Christine Anderson. She visited Alberta. You were there with her on stage. I did an interview yesterday with leader of the People's Party of Canada, Maxime Bernier, where we talked about not just Christine, but the reaction that she got from conservatives, most notably conservatives in Ottawa, Pierre Poilievre, calling her opinions vile and racist, but not filling in that blank as to exactly what opinions are vile and racist. And then Alberta conservatives, the mayor of Calgary said the same thing, and Alberta conservatives are saying the same thing. We should not associate with her, but they never say why. It's just, you're racist, go away. And that pejorative is just thrown around so willy-nilly by conservatives. Could you tell me your impressions of Christine Anderson and why you think that these people, especially conservatives, although Trudeau came in and chimed in on that as well, but especially conservatives, why they would shy away from Christine Anderson, who probably shares a lot in common with policies of conservatives. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that they all are the same. All the ruling parties, there's absolutely no difference. It's the same coin, it's just they're flipping it, playing a game. The same in the United States of America, Democrats and the Republicans, and then Republicans and Democrats. And here in Alberta, in Canada, actually, as a whole, is the same game, voting for the lesser of two evils, being scared of a bigger villain. They all are villains. The past 3 years have shown us that we were betrayed by all the parties and all the politicians except few. You know, one here, one there. You mentioned one of them, Maxime Bernier. What an amazing statesman he has become in the past 3 years. You know, sometimes people don't like someone for the past, but let's just focus on the past 3 years. What he did was what a so-called conservative government was supposed to be doing, which to be an official opposition to the liberal and NDP psychopaths, because that's what they are. But no, that didn't happen. All of those people have betrayed those that elected them. There is absolutely no difference between NDP, so-called conservatives, because they are not conservatives anymore, and the liberals. They all are in bed together, sharing the same bed. Sometimes you will have a politician that will cleverly lie to you, trying to pretend, like Pierre Poilievre, that I'm the good guy and I am standing for freedom. And you gotta vote for me, because if you do not vote for me, then you're going to have the crazy psychopath Trudeau. But his statement from the past few days, it just clearly, and I warned people about Pierre Poilievre, but people are blinded. They're like horses with the blinders on, and they're like, no, that's our savior. That's the savior of Canada, because he speaks good during some of the parliament sessions. And it's true. Sometimes he speaks the right words. However, he is not a good man, just like Stephen Harper was not a good man. Stephen Harper brought the WEF and all this lie into our nation, and people just do not know that. So when they look at the politicians, they think they're good people because they tell them what people want to hear. But look, the Bible is very clear. It says, look what they do, you shall know them by their fruits, and their fruits are rotten. Pierre Poilievre during this time didn't stand up for the political prisoners, didn't fight for us. Where was he hiding, that traitor to conservatism? And I try to tell that to the people, and they're like, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. But now, last week, the words he said clearly are demonstrating that he is no different than Justin Trudeau Castro. He used exactly identical words to that psychopathic so-called prime minister. The same thing. And I said, I told you, they are the same people. What we need here, we need to remove those evil, wicked traitors, Judas Iscariots, from the parliament, from the legislatures, and from the city hall. And we need to replace them with good candidates, people that stood for us during this craziness, people that were willing to be arrested, marched with us, bled with us, and stood for the Canadian rights and freedoms and for the Constitution and the Criminal Code of Canada. So I find it fascinating that Pierre Poilievre, which of course is a traitor to conservatives and a huge disappointment, he used identical wordings. I find that fascinating that this psychopath in parliament, so-called prime minister, is using identical. It's like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. So provincial government is the same thing. There's no difference between the NDP, conservatives, and the liberals. You got to remember, in the province of Alberta, it was the conservative government that shut us down. It was the conservative government that arrested more pastors than Chinese dictatorship. It was the conservative government that was caught red-handed, breaking their own rules and regulations, partying. Those people are still in power. Travis Taves, that partied at the Sky Palace, he's a minister. You've got the Copping, you've got the Nixon brothers, the Mafia brothers. You've got Casey Madhu, that came publicly and said that this has this whole thing was never about keeping people safe or about science. It was about control. Those people are in power. He's the deputy premier. And of course, the new savior of Alberta, Danielle Smith, she promised that she's going to fix it. She's doing exactly the same thing. She's jabbing people left and right. Still on house arrest. Everything she promised, she did not deliver. Flip-flopping political pancakes, liars, Judas Iscariots. That's what those people are. So Christine Anderson, I spent a few days with her, and I'm telling you, she's genuine. She's concerned about immigration in Germany. If you know anything about Europe, Europe is under invasion. That's what it is. Let's call it, let's call this the way it is. It's an invasion. People that do not value democracy have invaded Germany and are destroying it. And it looks like the mainstream political parties are not willing to stand up. So God lift up Christine Anderson. What is she standing for? She's standing for God and state-given rights. She is advocating for freedom. She says, well, listen, there has to be some kind of checks and balances if it comes to immigration. You cannot just open the borders and bring millions of people. That destroys economy. That destroys demographics. That destroys everything from, criminal aspects to finances, you name it. Economy is collapsing. And she simply says, hey, this is total insanity. You are destroying us from within. And I agree. Those people should be charged with treason, just like our politicians should be charged with treason as well. So what happened was I was invited by the farmers and the beef producers, ranchers here in the province of Alberta to give Christine Anderson a white hat. White hat is a symbol of hospitality. It's like a thank you. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for being good, for doing something impressive. And that's what Christine Anderson did. She spoke on a global scale on a world stage against the tyranny of the federal government, and kudos to her. So when she came here, obviously, she is my hero. I came to spend some time with her. I was able to speak at the same stage and presented her with solidarity apparel, and then presented her with the white hat. And then they freaked out. All the devilish traitors in a political arena, the UCP, the conservative government, disassociated themselves from this politician that actually said what they were supposed to be saying, and she did what they were supposed to do, but they didn't. And then they attacked the white hatting ceremony as well. How dare you? Well, since when? Only the politicians and corrupted politicians that do not represent us have monopoly on whom we Albertans or we Canadians can honor. I mean, who those people think they are? We had packed houses, hundreds of people showing up everywhere this woman appeared. So that tells you everything. It speaks volume that Canadians love that woman. Albertans cherish that champion of freedom. So it was a great time to spend with her. I listened to her speeches a few times, and I'm sure she's not a perfect woman, just like you and me. We're not perfect, but she stands for freedom. And anyone that says that stands for freedom and vilifies that woman tells me clearly, and should tell you clearly as well, that they are liars. They're pretendees. We in Poland, we call them painted foxes. That means they're not real. They're just playing a game. And in Canada, we have seen this game for a very long time. You know, you got to vote for us, because if you don't vote for us, then they will get in and they will finish you off. No, you are all the same. That's why I decided to support Maxime Bernier, and I decided to run for a political office myself. I'll tell you, when I was in a solitary cell and they would not give me my Bible, they would not give me my glasses, I had nothing to do. So I was thinking, I said, God, they're going to either murder me, because obviously they will not allow me to be just a pastor. So I got to rise up. And at that moment, if they knew, they should never lock a man like me in prison, in solitary confinement. So I decided, fine, if I cannot be just a pastor, I will become a pastor politician. And what was chasing me yesterday, I shall be chasing tomorrow. When I was released, I was approached by the Independence Party of Alberta. And I remember them during the rallies. You know, sometimes you meet so many thousands of people and you see banners, and I remember them. I really never had a conversation with them, except thank you for standing up. And then when they came, they asked me if I would consider running for the leadership of this party. And my first, reaction was no. But then God reminded me that prayer in a solitary cell. And then eventually, a few days later, I agreed. I was chosen to be the leader of this party. And since then, we are growing like a wildfire. We have thousands of new members, and we will be running in this upcoming provincial election against those corrupted politicians that do not care about us, that have betrayed us. And I'm talking about conservative government, UCP. I'm talking about the liberal government or Alberta party that is disguising themselves as a new party, but they are the liberal parties, and then the NDP psychopaths. I mean, those are crazy people altogether. So May is the election. I'm still on house arrest, so that tells you everything, that this conservative government with Danielle Smith that promised to set us free has no intention to help us here, that she's just doing gimmicks, political maneuvers, and is afraid, because of my popularity right now and the party's popularity, that we might have a crack on it. So she decided to keep me on house arrest. That's exactly how you deal with political dissidents in China or North Korea or in Soviet Russia. So don't kid yourself. Those politicians, those career politicians, are traitors. Danielle Smith is a traitor. Pierre Poilievre is a traitor to Canadian people. And of course, the ruling parties, you know for yourself how evil those people are.
One point I'd like to put into this conversation that I put in with Maxime the other day, just so that listeners, if they haven't seen that other video, can understand when you bring up immigration as being perhaps the point that these conservatives are calling vile and racist. I think people should know, for example, the People's Party of Canada's platform plank on immigration is a cap of 150,000. Under Pierre Elliott Trudeau in the 80s, it was about 88,000. Under Jean Chrétien in the 96, I believe it was 70,000. And here's Maxime Bernier saying 100 to 150,000. And yet he's vilified, as was Christine Anderson, for daring to cap immigration. And then you had Jean Chrétien move it to 250,000 a year. And now we have 460,000 a year. But I think that it's the pot calling the kettle black and hypocrisy, because every single prime minister in Canadian history has limited immigration. Yeah. Some higher, some lower. But so it's not immigration that they hate and find distasteful or vile or racist. It's the fact that along with this rational economic reason for limited immigration, they are coupling it with individual freedom. They talk about freedom. And that is something conservatives, liberals, NDP, Green, Bloc hate, is individual freedom, because as you have correctly pointed out, and I'm in agreement totally with you, they are all the same. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, Pastor Pawlowski, about conservatism, because I asked this about Maxime. I said, Maxime, why are you using, in a general way, why are you using the word conservative when that is your opponent's label? And he says, you're right. I mean, just go watch the video. He addresses it, and he says that he's pulling back from calling himself conservative. He may be personally conservative, which is a different thing, but he's pulling back from calling the People's Party a true conservative party, because true conservatism in Canada for the past 100 years has been socialism. It has been liberalism. It has been whatever ism you want to call it, but it is not freedom. And so he called his party, People's Party, a freedom party yesterday, which I think it's absolutely accurate. That name conservative, our good friend Salim Mansur wrote a letter to me. I should publish it with his permission, where he said that conservatism is an attitude, a personal attitude where your baser instincts, your baser behavior is controlled, self-controlled. You do not try to offend, right? You nothing to excess. You try to guide your behavior under certain rules that you pick for yourself. He says that conservatism, the political ideology of conservatives, doesn't exist. It is not an ideology. It is not a political thing, which is why conservative parties are always infighting, always eating their own, always being destroyed by the liberals or other parties, because they don't have a political philosophy. They're trying to suck you in by saying, we're conservative, we believe in personal constraint, when personal constraint is just that, personal. What's your idea of conservatism, and does it fit in with what I'm trying to say here?
Well, the way they're painting Christine Anderson, Maxime Bernier, and others, Derek Sloan, and others that are rising up in this country, and myself as racist, I mean, it's such a ridiculous notion. I work in Africa. I started orphanages, medical clinics. Half of my church are colored people. Of course, half of the people that I serve on the streets are Native Americans, colored people. When they have nothing, when they literally have nothing on you, they will throw those names. You're racist, you're vile, you're hateful. Why am I hateful? Because I disagree with you. So if I am hateful because I disagree with you, then you are also hateful because you disagree with me. I mean, it goes both ways. But you see, with the liberals, conservatives, and NDP, again, they're all the same. it's all the same to them, because it's what we say goes. You have no say whatsoever. We will interpret what is allowed, what's not. That's a totalitarian regime. And like I said a number of times, we are truly living again behind the Iron Curtain, under the boots of the Chinese, I guess, this time, because the Trudeau Castro loves the basic dictatorship in China. He says so. We're living in China, not in a free and democratic society anymore. So, for me, I want to stand by God and state given standards that we used to have when this country was being formed. If you know your history, you know that North America was formed by pilgrims that escaped persecution, and they came to this North American land for freedom, and they call it the New World, a world without persecution, when a man can work hard and achieve something and pass it to the next generation and worship his God the way he wants to worship his God. All of those things are under attack by all levels of government, so-called conservatives and the liberals and the NDPers, municipal governments, provincial, federal, you name it. So I agree that we have to start using different words, because those people have hijacked the statements. They have hijacked, the wording, and they want to run with that. But the truth is, they are not conservative. They are liberals. They all are liberals, progressive liberals, and they are no longer interested in protecting and serving people that elected them. It feels more and more, it looks more and more that those people are working for some other entities, because they're not listening to the people, they're listening to some globalist multi-trillionaires, and they are parroting, all the words that those rich psychopaths are saying. For example, you will own nothing. Danielle Smith here in the province of Alberta, people do not know, she marches with the homosexuals every single year without fail. She stands for abortion. How conservative is that? She wants a cap net zero. So she is on board with the global warming garbage, with this green God agenda, trying to destroy the industry. But she says she's not going to do it as fast as the liberal government wants her to do it. I mean, in the end of the day, how you want to die? By a snake, a viper, or scorpion. They all are poisonous, and they're all going to kill you. So I say to the people, they all are leading you to the slaughterhouse. Sometimes some of them will lead you there slower, but you're dead. You just don't know it yet. So maybe stop this craziness of revolving door. Don't vote for the lesser of two evils, and maybe for a change, vote for what's good. Vote for good candidates. They're not perfect candidates. You will never find perfection outside of God. Only God is perfect. So I will fail you. Just like you're going to fail me, just a matter of time. But vote for people that are willing to stand for the God-given convictions. Think about it. Christine Anderson shows up, and it was highly popular event, filled to capacity. People responded amazingly. Wherever she shows up, she's a hero. And then some psychopath, some traitor to Canadian democracy says she has vile views, she's a racist. And then all of them, like parrots, weak, evil parrots. Yeah, she is vile. I have nothing to do with her. I didn't even see her. I didn't want to see her. Like every one of them. It's just crazy. So what I did, and I know what Maxime Bernier did as well, and kudos to him. I really like Max. I really like what he's standing for. And again, he's not a perfect man. And I'm trying to emphasize that. Do not look for perfection. You will not find perfect people. Look for what they are doing, and what they are doing right now is good. Max stood for the past, few years for our God and state given rights. So what I did, because I don't know what else to do, I called a press conference at City Hall. after the mayor made her vile and racist comments against this German stateswoman. And I did a press conference and I said, well, if you don't like democracy, if you don't like freedom, and I said to Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau and Daniel Smith and Gondek, the mayor of this city, if you don't like freedom, I am offering you a free ticket to China or North Korea or a Soviet Russia. Go and don't come back. Enjoy. Spare us your presence. Go over there. You will fit perfectly. Don't come back. Over there, there's a totalitarian regime. That's what you want. You will fit perfectly. But for the rest of us Canadians that value freedom, personal freedom, bodily autonomy, well, we want to keep it the way we had it. And if people don't see that, then I don't really know what else to say, except that in May, people of Alberta will have at least an option. They can keep voting for the pathological, professional lying Pinocchios that have been lying to them for decades. They can vote for the NDP sociopaths, socialists and communist dictators. They can vote for Alberta Party, which is a liberal party, and of course you have the same thing you have in Parliament in Ottawa, or you can vote for the Independence Party of Alberta. I mean, the first thing we want to do, is that not crazy? The first thing we want to do a referendum. In other words, we want to give voice back to the people. It should be this every year. We should have on key issues a referendum when people have actually a choice to voice their opinion, not just elected few crazy people that decide how our tomorrow is going to look like, but hey, you can have your voice back. And that's what Alberta, the Independence Party of Alberta wants. We want to give you back your voice. Hey, you tell us what you want us to do for a change. A referendum on independence, just like the Quebec did. If Quebec could do it and win billions of dollars every year, why can't Albertans do it? I think we're smart enough to pull this off. I think we should pull this off because we are being treated like a raped, wife over and over by this abusive husband from Ottawa that is robbing our children from inheritance, from the future. Albertans should have at least an option to say, hey, we don't want to be raped anymore. We don't want this pathological liar stealing our money from our children anymore. We want our voice back. That's what we're offering. We're not offering what those other parties are offering, which is a total global dictatorship, digital IDs. You will not be able to buy and sell unless you're approved. A government that freezes your bank accounts, a government that will not give you what's rightfully yours unless you sign up to the digital ID. 15-minute cities that are being implemented right here in the province of Alberta, in Edmonton. I mean, it's just craziness. It's total insanity. So if Albertans want dictatorship, well, vote for the UCP or vote for the NDP. That's your choice. But if you want freedom, if you want someone that has proven himself for the past 18 years, I'm fighting totalitarian regime in this country, and I did not bow before them. If you want a fighter, if you want a winner, well, you got an option. You have a choice. And I said to people many times, I'm not going to kiss your bums. I'm not going to juggle for you so I can get your vote. If you don't want a man like me, then don't vote for me. But if you want freedom, personal freedom, to do as you please, if it comes to your bodily autonomy and freedom of education and freedom, if it comes to your finances, well, you can vote for us. And why? Because we stand for those freedoms. And I think, in summary, I don't think there is anyone better, if you will, to fight totalitarian regime than someone that was victimized by that totalitarian regime. Think about it. I know what I'm talking about, not only because I grew up under totalitarian regime, but I also tasted it right here in Canada. And I know what I'm talking about. And I don't want my children ever to face the same thing that I had to endure it. So I'm willing to change the laws. I'm willing to implement checks and balances. I want to elect judges, not appoint them. I want our own police force. that will actually work for Albertans, not for Castros of Ottawa. I want election of chief of police. I want constitutional sheriffs, people that will be watching politicians, watching the judges with checks and balances and accountability. I want economical freedom from the overreach of, federal government. We don't stand a chance. Every single time we are being outvoted. Yukon Territory, Northwest, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all of us combined together, we are always outvoted by just one province, Ottawa. This has to stop. We need a equal representation within this confederation, which we do not have. Again, we're being raped repeatedly, and they are telling us that we should like it. Well, I don't like it. And if you are like me, well, you have a choice, because one of the first things I'm going to do is I'll bring a referendum on independence.
Powerful, powerful, Pastor Pawlowski. When they say that when the government denies the individual rights of one person, they're denying it to everybody. And conversely, when somebody like you is fighting for your own personal rights and your own individual rights, you're fighting for everybody's individual rights. And for that, I thank you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. And I want to finish with this. For all the people that are a little bit terrified or overwhelmed, I want you to know that we already won. History is teaching us that we already won. The enemy just does not know it yet. We are lions, and lions never bow before the hyenas. So go out there and keep eating them for breakfast. Do not quit. Do not give up. We have this saying in our church: winners never quit, quitters never win. So go out there and be victorious. Be blessed, and remember, when you invite God back into your nation, he always shows up with liberty. He is freedom. God is freedom. And when you invite him into your home, into your province, into your city, into your country, he will show up and will set not only you free, but all the people around you. So that's what I pray for. That's what I wish for all of you. Freedom. Be free in the name of Jesus.